Okay, hello everyone. This is Sharonda, and this is my podcast as well as YouTube channel, Spiritual Sense. Today is October the 8th, which is a Saturday. And I'd like to start off by saying that this podcast as well as YouTube channel is for entertainment purposes. I go over a variety of topics in regards to the paranormal, occult, and supernatural. So I give my own take on such topics. It's an open social discussion. So I don't consider this a religious or biblical podcast or YouTube channel, although I may refer back to the biblical text from time to time for discussion. So the topic that I am going to speak about today, because it came across my screen on yesterday or perhaps the day before in regards to Armageddon. Armageddon. What is Armageddon? Many people may have heard of Armageddon, movies about Armageddon and things of the sort. So I'm going to read as defined here as to what is Armageddon. The last battle between good and evil before the day of judgment. A biblical hill of Megiddo, an archaeological site on the plain of Esdraelon, south of the present-day Haifa in Israel. The place where the last battle between good and evil will be fought, a dramatic and catastrophic conflict typically seen as likely to destroy the world or the human race. So I am going to pull up some information in regards to what does the Bible mentions about Armageddon. And then I'm gonna give you my account as to what I feel. The last tarot card reading, if for those who may have viewed in or will be viewing in, listening in, or will be listening in. Um, I felt as though it was something in regards to speaking about Armageddon or doomsday. So it mentions that the Bible mentions Armageddon only once in Revelation 16:16, and they gathered them together to the place called Hebrew Armageddon. The Greek word Armageddon comes from two Hebrews words, Har and Megiddo, meaning the hill of Megiddo. The common but misleading notion is that Armageddon will be the last and climatic battle to be fought on earth between the powers of good and evil. However, it is not the case in several crucial respects, is what it has indicated here. Armageddon, or more likely the large, broad valley of Jezreel or Esdraelon, which Megiddo overlooks, will in fact be the staging area for the final great battle of that age, but not the site of the battle itself. So that is this, it mentions that that is set not at Megiddo, but the valley of Jehoshaphat, commonly reckoned to the Kidron Valley, immediately adjacent to Jerusalem. Notwithstanding the popular concept of the Battle of Armageddon, the Bible makes no specific prediction for a war fought at Armageddon between two human armies precisely at Christ's return. However, the Bible does say that the armies of the East and West will be drawn to the infamous valley by lion demons. From they from there they will march to Jerusalem. There they will fight the returning Jesus Christ. So let me see if I'm able to pull up some more information because something just came in my being as I was reading that. And as to what I felt as though that was actually saying. Okay. So apocalypse. Give me one moment. Let me pull this information up. So basically, while this information is pulling up, and I have a lot of tabs over here. So let me see if I'm able to get those closed to proceed. But basically, my synopsis of that is when there's battles amongst adversaries, whether it's good, right or wrong, good or bad, black or white, alpha, omega, whatever, however you want to see it, there's going to be a contrast and an antagonist and a I can't remember the other word, how you would reference to that. But anyways, there's always going to be the one that's going to be the bigger of the two. And so I guess in essence, what is from what just coming into my being, when there's a battles, which can happen on a personal level as well as on an exponential level, meaning on a bigger scale, such as worldwide or region wide or wherever the case may be. Oftentimes, you will find that the big dog may appear to have many powers or to be powerful. Because as we know, intimidation and power come by numbers. It's driven by numbers. It's driven by the amount of damage that can be presented. But I think, in essence, when you have things such as that, that's when you will have Jesus to show up. That means the Spirit to show up to do the unthinkable. Apart from what may appear to be the revelation, meaning what may appear to be the outcome. So if we have the big dog and we got the small dog fighting amongst each other, and everybody will have the assumption that the bigger dog will be the one that wins. But that's not always the case, particularly when you're dealing with spirit and spirituality, because God will begin to show you, don't underestimate the power of the smaller man or the smaller individual. And I'm using that metaphorically, and I think the biblical text is written in such a way as well. Is to get the mindset of the person as well as the heart of the person to be spoken out. So if you're conditioned to think about valleys and hills and mountains and stuff, you won't begin to see that you are in your own battle of Armageddon, your own personal battle within life, and to be able to apply what is being written in a more personal context. So you can never get beside yourself as the point and think just because you can intimidate and outnumber people that God is going to continue to allow that to happen, because that's not always the case. Because when God shows up and spirit shows up and that existence shows up, then he will reign. And I think a lot of things that are being pushed up and perpetuated, not only in mass communication, but in your everyday life practices, work such as that, to let God show up. And for the non-believers, because many people don't believe in a God as we see and know God. Many people don't understand the relationship of God and how he works. So I think many of battles will happen to lead up to the Armageddon or the big war, and showing you how supernaturally it is spirits that are being summoned for these events. And I kid you not. And I'm going to give you an example as to what I'm talking about. You may think I'm crazy or what have you. Before I proceed, I'm going to tell my story, and then I'm going to pull up, because it has here some information that I want to go over. But before I do that, picture comes to mind. So I went to the movie theater many years. I'm not gonna say many years ago. The movie must have came out like 20 years ago, probably 18, 20 years ago or so. And I remember going to the movie theater to see the movie Saving Private Ryan. I remember going to the movie theater to see that movie, which is a war crime movie, which is something that I'm not too big or shabby on movies as such, but if I'm compelled to go, then there's some significance as to a message within the movie. So, and me watching the movie, they showed the different, the casualties of the explosions and the military and things of that sort. And I began to look at the movie and I could actually see within the movie like the spirits of the people as they was dying, the casualties and things like that, and moving about and stuff within the movie. I don't know if that was a personalized message to be presented to me, or I was actually seeing it with my own physical eyes to disturb me from whatever the case may be. I don't know. Saying that to say, I do believe that it's more spiritual than you will know. And once the eyes has been conditioned to see it, you will see as such. And I think things that transpire is those energies wants to show you how God happens. How things happen is more spiritually than you will know. Because people won't begin to believe the certain things that presents. But anyways, and watching the movie, like I could see the movement in the I guess I won't say souls, but the spirits of the account of the deaths that was occurring within the movie with many of the soldiers and military people and stuff. So, but anyways, it works similarly, same way in regards to um real life and events, events such as the apocalypse or the Armageddon or doomsday. As such, once the eyes has been conditioned to see. Oh, okay, so in terms of the apocalypse, it says it refers to any time when a supernatural being like a god reveals mysteries or the future to a human, is what it has indicated here. So apocalypse may not necessarily be something that is in the Bible. Nuclear destruction is man-made, as are most of the things that could cause global damage. But this idea has its roots in the Bible. So the complete final destruction of the world as described in the biblical book of Revelation, or an event involving destruction or damage on an awesome or catastrophic scale. So then you have apocalypse, which I don't think is depicted in the Bible, but you have Armageddon. Again, I've read what it mentions about Armageddon, the final battle between good and evil as it relates to here. Then you have Doomsday. It says when atomic scientists use this to indicate how close humanity is to annihilation, which is considered doomsday. Like the apocalypse and Armageddon, this one is more religiously rooted. So do we want to say that a lot of this stuff is factual? As again, I think in terms of dealing with battles, actual battles, and warlike activity will appear to be a doomsday for you, because you got to understand those individuals who are in war and battles, personnel, are channeling spirits from a time ago, is what I'm getting at. So when you are in that reality, you'll begin to see in that existence. And that is what the Armageddon, doomsday, and apocalypse is. Because you'll begin to see in a different, you begin to see it as if you was watching a movie, watching a Hollywood depiction of events in time. So it will be like a doomsday in your reality, because it ultimately is a battle of spirits. And you will begin to see how spirits take over individuals that are in such um, things. Now, it does mention about the rapture. I do feel as though the rapture was something that I've read before that is not really even mentioned in the Bible, but many people refer, uh, you know, of the rapture and things of that sort. I think you really have to be very careful when you read things as such, because again, I mentioned that a lot of these spirits from time ago are still around. That means that energies and stuff are still around. They are still to make their presence known by way of overtaking individuals. So Armageddon, doomsday, and things of that sort. Okay, it's touchy subjects, because you don't know if this is a personalized message for you to be receptive to and use that as your reality, and you'll be tagged as such. So, in other words, if I read this and someone has given me that revelation and I've accepted that, okay, could in fact I'm being targeted because of that. And because I believe it and I chose to come in a binding agreement, that I have to perish or I have to transition over because of that agreement or that belief. I do feel as though a lot of it is taunting spirits. I do feel as though if you continue to entertain certain biblical writing and scribes and texts, it will give you a personalized date. And that's why you really don't know the date or hour. I think if you choose to know, God will give you some sense of normalcy and comfort if you truly want to know around about our age range. So we don't want to partake in giving a definitive date. Okay. So that's basically what that is. Now, here about the 7 signs of Armageddon. 7 signs of Armageddon. And then I'm going to bring this to a close. That's what I'm going to do, because I don't want, this is spiritual sense. This is me giving my own account on biblical themes and theological writings and, you know, my own hypothesis on it. I am not a Bible teacher, spiritualist, gypsy, uh, intuitive. What are the 7 signs of Armageddon? So it gives, there's a video here, but I was trying to see, and of course, the same thing, conquest, war, famine, death. Those are the signs of the angel of death. Ultimately, it's the angel of death. I think it's a lot of this is being written metaphorically. You don't want to be receptive to it, because when you begin to take note of a lot of this, you begin to see spirits even within those in certain, areas. You begin to see spirits. Uh it says, I don't know if this is the same thing. Cana in John 2, 1 through 11 shows the change from water to wine, the beginning of the signs. A healer for the prince's son in John's 4, 46 through 54, according to Capernaum 3, 1. Paralytic healing at Beth, Bethesda is said to occur in John 5:15. The 5,000 were fed in John 6:55 to 14, chapter 14. I'm going to say chapter 6, verse 55 on to chapter 14. Taking water with him and Jesus walking on water from John 16:25. And then, so I guess it's chapter 16 through 24. Taking care of the boy born to blind. John 9, 1 through 7 shows healing by Christ. Again, as I mentioned, in reference to Christ and miracles, I do believe miracles do occur. I do. But it's not that sensationalized as people would like to depict. I feel as though a lot of this was deception of demonic spirits, is what that is. It was more spiritual than you would know. And I think God used Christ as an example to show about, I will use whom I will and whom I way, to show you that oftentimes you could be operating in such a manner and it's unfavorable. It's not in a favorable sense, is what I feel. But a lot of these is spirits. These were spirits that was presented to him. Is what that was. Okay, so anyways, I'm going all off topic, but ultimately, it goes into the Holocaust and the reemergence of Israel. Says one of the preeminent signs of the end times is the Jewish survival of the Holocaust and the reemergence of the nation of Israel as a Jewish state. Over 2,600 years ago, the prophet Ezekiel foretold these events. As quoted, then he said to me, Son of man, these bones represent the people of Israel. They are saying, we have become old, dry bones. All hope is gone. Now give them this message from the sovereign Lord. Oh my God, I will open your graves of exile and cause you to rise again. Then I will bring you back to the land of Israel. When this happens, O my people, you will know that I am the Lord. So it has Ezekiel 37, 11 through 13, a reference to this. It mentions the following the first century Roman conquest of the Holy Land. The Jews were banished from the land of Israel. The Romans renamed the area of Palestine and exiled its people to farthest corners of the Roman Empire. But it mentions in Ezekiel 37, God promised to bring the Jews out of exile. He promised to bring them back into the land of Israel. Not only did he promise to restore their nation, but God promised to do so by opening their graves at a time when the Jews feel that all hope is gone. The aftermath of Hitler's Holocaust of the Jewish people created these very conditions, nearly destroying an entire race of people and draining the hope of countless survivors. But out of the Holocaust, God brought the Jewish people back into the land of Israel, just as He had promised. So I'm gonna tell you, Revelation just come to me. Number one, we don't know what Jewish meant in regards to Jewish, because from my understanding, Jewish can go across different racial spectrums to be considered Jewish. So what does that mean, Jewish? We don't know what that means in terms of back then. What type of person was considered a Jewish person? So I think that, and this is not to mar anyone of Jewish faith, but I think it was talking in terms of characteristics or perhaps traits in reference to being restored by way of your nation being restored, and they changed the name. I think when you begin to speak in such a matter and it's a language that is understood without spoken. A lot of languages, it revealed to me, are based off one main language, and it's basically being twisted in such a matter to trick and deceive those from catching on as to what that is. Okay? Jerusalem is a burden to the world. That's what it mentions. Another visible sign of the end times is the world diplomatic struggle over Israel. The prophet Zacharias foresaw this event centuries ago. As quoted, I will make Jerusalem and Judah like an intoxicating drink to all the nearby nations that send their armies to besiege Jerusalem. On that day, I will make Jerusalem, a heavy stone, a burden for the world. None of the nations who try to lift it will escape unscathed. So not to get into so much, but I think in just the synopsis that I just got from that, what you see will coincide in your own personal situation. Like as I showed you hallmark wise, meaning on as an example by way of these events and these particular characteristics or behavior, you'll begin to relate that to everyday practices. Catch my drill. So you will begin to understand coding and speaking in such a matter apart from. It's a language that is understood but not spoken. Many people who've been conditioned to see in a certain language will not begin to pick up that understanding. The dramatic increase in travel and knowledge, one of the signs of end times that anyone can easily recognize is the recent explosive increase in travel and knowledge. In a vision, God revealed to Daniel that in the time of the end, travel and knowledge will increase. But you, Daniel, keep this prophecy a secret, seal up the book until the end, until the time of the end. Many will rush here and there, and knowledge will increase. Okay, so this in essence gives me a synopsis in regards to when I did my podcast as well as YouTube presentation about deception of spirits. Oftentimes you'll find when a person is going like a tailspin, like a guinea pig on a tailspin, round and round and round and round and round, they can't find their way out of the situation. It could be something not only nutritionally going on with this person, could be circulatory wise or whatever the case may be, to where they're not being properly fed, or they could be in a situation where they're under certain conditions that will cause them to not be able to see clearly or to think clearly. So that leads me to think that perhaps this person, this could have taken place in a region where, the climate, or there's some extraneous activities such as walking, or there's not a lot of replenishing of drinks and food, adequate food. And as a result of this, once the eyes begin to see that nutrition has a lot to do with thinking and the ability to think, beyond, because of course you need these nutrients in order to what? To think clearly and to think beyond. Number 4, exponential growth marks the times. If a marked increase in travel and knowledge constitutes one of the most clearly observable signs of the end times, then the two are merely components of a much larger sign of the end times, exponential growth. So it mentions that Jesus pointed to exponential growth as a sign of his coming. Later, Jesus sat on the slopes of the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to him privately and asked, "When will all this take place? And will there be any sign ahead of time to signal your return and the end of the world?" Jesus told them, "Don't let anyone mislead you, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Messiah.' They will lead many astray, and wars will break out near and far, but don't panic. Yes, these things must come, but the end won't follow immediately. The nations and kingdoms will proclaim war against each other, and there will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world, but all this will be only the beginning of the horrors to come." So I think just in terms of when it mentions about when there's growth, in other words, when there's substantial abundance, spirits will begin to wonder, where does this growth come from, and what are the doings, and what are you doing to circumvent this growth? And that could be in terms of money. It could be in terms of you buy a bigger house, a better car. You're going to have spirits that's going to gravitate in because they're going to begin to scratch your head and wonder, okay, where did all this come from? And what are you doing? As I mentioned, they will come and say that I am Messiah. That's why I said it's two-faced, two-headed, because God is omnipresent, as it has been mentioned. But you will be used as an example. You will be led to the water, and then if you drink, although you have been put by the water by way of temptation, ultimately it's going to be a learning tool one way or another. Knock on wood. I don't mean to be try to be facetious or get a reaction, or even trying to stir up any type of anger at all. I'm not. But that's basically what I gather from that there. Now it does go over about the wars, the famines, and earthquakes and things of the sort. The rise of God and the God Alliance. I'm not going to go into a lot of these. The rise of global government. I think when people begin to decipher and get a understanding as to what is really being conveyed and what is really being said, and they realize how those spirits will have more control, or try to anyways, over their everyday liberties and freedoms, they have to continue to write in such a manner to keep those spirits at bay. Okay? The good news preached throughout the world. Let's see, sign of the end time. Okay, so I'm going to conclude on that note. But yes, I just wanted to give my synopsis on Armageddon and what I felt Armageddon was. You know, oftentimes when we are in our own battle, you know, it can appear as though it's an Armageddon. Am I saying that we are off limits from going through war? No, I'm not saying that. I don't think it's a doomsday per se that may happen in this life existence. Maybe it's to come, but I don't feel as though that is something that's going to. I think it's a massive transition of energies, is what I feel. And as I mentioned before, you know, who know what was being told in a time and space time ago. So if you accept that to be your reality, then I think in essence that's what it would be. Because if ultimately if everybody come on one accord and really truly want it to be doomsday and summons those spirits, I do feel as though the energy will present as such and it will manifest as such. So that's why you want to what? Keep those spirits at bay because it can happen. I'm not going to say that it can't. You know, it can. If that's the true desire, that's why we have to be more positive because it can. So I'm going to conclude this episode of Spiritual Sense speaking about Armageddon. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you are more than welcome to comment below. Until then, you have a safe and wonderful day. Good day.